The galaxy had known peace under the Coalition for 3,000 years. 7 ancient species ruled over 240 star systems with absolute authority. They called themselves the Enlightened Council, and they believed their word was law. No species had ever challenged them. No civilization had ever refused their demands. The Coalition crushed rebellions before they could begin. They absorbed young species into their empire, like a massive creature swallowing small fish. Resistance was not just futile. It was unthinkable. When their survey ships discovered Earth in the outer spiral arm of the Milky Way, the Coalition saw nothing special. Humans were primitive by galactic standards. They had barely reached their own moon. Their technology was centuries behind the weakest Coalition member. The Enlightened Council observed Earth for 50 years before making contact. They studied human behavior, their wars, their art, their strange determination to survive against all odds. The Council found humans interesting but ultimately unremarkable. They were just another species to be collected. Ambassador Torvik of the Volanthi species arrived on Earth with a fleet of 200 warships. The vessels hung in orbit like dark clouds blocking the sun. Every telescope on Earth turned upward. Every government received the same transmission. Humanity was to surrender its sovereignty immediately. Earth would become a tribute world. Humans would serve the Coalition in whatever capacity the Council decided. There would be no negotiation. There would be no discussion. The Coalition had spoken, and the Coalition's word was final. The world leaders of Earth gathered in Geneva within hours. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists filled the emergency session. Fear gripped many of them. They had seen the size of the alien fleet. They understood the technology gap between Earth and the Coalition. Some argued for immediate surrender. They believed survival required submission. Others demanded resistance, even if it meant extinction. Better to die free than live as slaves. The debate raged for 3 days while the Coalition fleet waited patiently above. Ambassador Torvik grew impatient on the 4th day. He transmitted another message demanding Earth's answer. The Coalition was not accustomed to waiting. Lesser species typically surrendered within hours of first contact. This delay was unusual and somewhat insulting. Torvik warned that any further hesitation would be considered an act of defiance. The punishment for defiance was complete planetary bombardment. Earth had 12 hours to respond. The United Nations Security Council met one final time. They had reached a decision, though not all members agreed with it. Secretary General Maria Santos stood before the assembly with tired eyes and trembling hands. She had not slept in 4 days. The weight of human civilization pressed down on her shoulders. She read the prepared statement 3 times before transmitting it to the Coalition fleet. The message was short. It contained exactly 4 words. The entire galaxy would remember those 4 words for millennia to come. The message simply said, "Come and take it." Ambassador Torvik received the transmission with confusion. He had the message translated 7 times, believing there must be an error. Surely the humans understood their situation. Surely they realized that resistance meant death. He contacted the Enlightened Council for guidance. The 7 ancient rulers laughed at the human response. They found it amusing that such a primitive species would show defiance. They ordered Torvik to make an example of Earth. The galaxy needed to witness what happened to those who refused the Coalition. The bombardment began at midnight Greenwich Mean Time. Coalition warships opened fire on major cities across the globe. New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, Tokyo, Paris, and dozens of other metropolitan centers faced destruction. The first wave of plasma fire descended through the atmosphere like falling stars. Millions of humans watched the sky burn with terror in their hearts. The end of human civilization seemed seconds away. Then something unexpected happened. The plasma bursts stopped in mid-air. They hung frozen above the cities like drops of fire suspended in time. Coalition sensors detected massive energy fluctuations across the planet. Something was intercepting their weapons. Something was absorbing the destructive energy and redirecting it harmlessly into space. Ambassador Torvik demanded an explanation from his tactical officers. None of them could provide one. Deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, a machine awakened. Humans had discovered alien technology buried in their planet 3 decades earlier. An ancient vessel had crashed on Earth millions of years before humans evolved. Scientists had worked in secret for 30 years to understand its systems. They had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. The technology was not just offensive, it was transformative. It gave humanity access to power that rivaled the coalition itself. Secretary General Santos appeared on every screen across the coalition fleet. Her voice was calm now. Her hands no longer trembled. She looked directly into the transmission camera with steel in her eyes. She spoke clearly and slowly so the translation systems would capture every word. Humanity had prepared for this moment. Earth was not the helpless world the coalition believed. The alien vessel buried beneath Switzerland contained technology from a Kayandi civilization that had opposed the coalition thousands of years ago. That civilization had fallen, but their knowledge survived. Humans had spent 3 decades learning from that knowledge. They had built weapons, shields, and engines that could challenge the enlightened council. Earth's response had not been arrogance. It had been a warning. The coalition fleet attempted to withdraw. Their engines failed. The same technology that stopped the bombardment now held their ships in place. Human vessels rose from hidden bases across the planet. They were small compared to coalition warships, but they moved with impossible speed. They struck with precision that coalition sensors could not track. Within 4 hours, 173 coalition warships had been disabled. The remaining vessels surrendered unconditionally. Ambassador Torvik was transported to the surface as a prisoner. He found himself standing before the same leaders who had debated surrender just days earlier. The Secretary General greeted him with professional coldness. She had a new message for the enlightened council. Earth would not become a tribute world. Earth would not serve the coalition. Instead, Earth demanded the immediate dissolution of the coalition's political structure. All enslaved species would be granted freedom. All tribute systems would end. The enlightened council would face trial for crimes against sentient life. The coalition ruled over 240 star systems with massive fleets and ancient technology. The enlightened council controlled resources that Earth could barely imagine. They laughed at the human demands just as they had laughed at the initial message of defiance. They assembled their full military might. 12,000 warships gathered at their capital world. They would crush Earth and make an example that the galaxy would never forget. The human fleet arrived at the coalition capital 3 weeks later. It numbered only 200 vessels. Coalition commanders found the size almost offensive. How could humans expect to challenge 12,000 warships with such a pitiful force? They ordered an immediate attack, expecting the battle to last mere minutes. The battle lasted 17 seconds. Human weapons tore through coalition shields like paper. Human engines allowed their ships to appear and disappear across the battlefield instantly. Human tactics exploited weaknesses the coalition commanders never knew existed. The ancient technology from the buried vessel had given humanity more than just weapons. It had given them knowledge. It had given them understanding of coalition systems and how to defeat them. The 12,000 warships fell in less than half a minute of combat. The enlightened council watched from their palace as their fleet burned in the sky above. 7 ancient rulers who had never known defeat stared at destruction beyond comprehension. They had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had crushed countless rebellions and absorbed hundreds of species. They had believed themselves immortal. They had believed their power was absolute. A human transport landed in their courtyard. Secretary General Santos walked out with an armed escort. She carried a document in her hands. The document outlined terms of unconditional surrender. The coalition would cease to exist. The Enlightened Council would face judgment. All enslaved species would be freed immediately. Earth would oversee the transition to a new galactic order. The eldest council member, a being called the Eternal Voice, demanded to know how this was possible. His species had conquered stars when humans still lived in caves. His civilization had existed for millions of years. How could primitives from a backwater planet defeat the greatest military force in galactic history? Secretary General Santos smiled for the first time since the crisis began. She explained that humans had one advantage the coalition never considered. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They had no history of defeat. They had no memory of coalition dominance. They did not know they were supposed to lose. They did not understand that resistance was supposed to be futile. They had faced the impossible and simply refused to accept it. The Eternal Voice signed the surrender document with shaking hands. His ancient eyes held something that no coalition member had ever experienced before. He felt fear. True, genuine fear of a species that should have been insignificant. He asked one final question before being taken into custody. He wanted to know what those 4 words meant. He wanted to understand why humans had responded to an ultimatum with such a simple phrase. What was the significance of telling a superior force to come and take it? Secretary General Santos explained the history behind the words. She told the story of ancient Spartans facing a Persian army that demanded their weapons. She explained that humans had a long tradition of defiance against overwhelming odds. She described the spirit that had driven humanity through countless wars, plagues, disasters, and near-extinction events. Humans survived because they refused to accept defeat. They thrived because they challenged the impossible. They conquered because they never learned when to quit. The Eternal Voice was led away in chains. The other 6 council members followed in silence. Their reign of 3,000 years ended not with a great battle or a long war, but with 17 seconds of combat and 4 words of defiance. The galaxy watched in amazement as the mighty coalition collapsed. Species that had lived under oppression for generations suddenly found themselves free. Tribute worlds declared independence. Slave populations rose up without fear of punishment. Earth became the center of a new galactic order. Humans did not seek to replace the coalition as rulers. They established a federation based on equality and cooperation. Every species had a voice. Every civilization had rights. The technology from the ancient vessel was shared freely with all who asked. Humanity had defeated the greatest power in the galaxy, not to build an empire, but to tear one down. Historians would debate for centuries how humans achieved the impossible. Some credited the ancient technology. Others pointed to human ingenuity and adaptability. A few suggested that humans simply got lucky. But those who had witnessed the events knew the truth. Humans won because they believed they could. They faced a force that had never been challenged and simply refused to be afraid. The message that started it all was carved into a monument on Earth. 4 words in every language known to humanity. 4 words that changed galactic history forever. 4 words that reminded the universe what happened when you underestimated the small blue planet in the outer spiral arm. Come and take it. The coalition had come. They had tried to take. They had failed. And Earth's concise response echoed through the stars for all time.